So thank you for joining us today for the webinar on migrating eDiscovery cases to the cloud. I'm Rick Clark, VP at Cloud9. I work with all of our strategic partners and thought leadership, so you might see me speaking at various conferences. But today, I really want to focus in on Annette and how she has put together a program and then has executed on migrating data to the cloud. So Annette, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background and how you arrived here today?
Thanks, Rick. I'm happy to be here. So I'm an attorney in an insurance coverage litigation practice. Because of the nature of our practice, our firm handles significant volumes of ESI, and data management is obviously really important to keeping us organized. Prior to becoming a lawyer, I was a paralegal with this particular practice group. And that's really where my familiarity with eDiscovery and various eDiscovery platforms came from. So not to date myself, but I've been pretty well versed in the eDiscovery world for close to 15 years. So a lot has changed since then, but our needs really have remained the same.
Very cool. Yeah, it's interesting being in the industry as long as we have. We've seen so many changes, and now we're in this whole new world of modern data and what do we do there? But
Right.
for
And if
today's
we know anything about attorneys, it's that they're resistant to change. So moving from, a static platform to something in the cloud that is much more user friendly, although it makes our lives easier, we're always just a little hesitant to do it.
but you did, right?
Yes, we
And
did.
it was successful and great. But let's start
Exactly.
at the beginning there. What was the major impetus to change? You had a lot of data locally, right, in the eDiscovery platform, and that was migrated up into Cloud9 Review. But what started the project there of migrating everything?
So in 2022, we actually left our previous firm and opened up our own shop. And when we were looking at how we were going to manage our data on a going forward basis, our main concerns were really internal data storage costs and also the ability to manage that data in-house. So we just kind of knew we needed something different. It allows us the ability to have kind of an on-demand support system without the expensive administrative overhead required if we say hired someone who was just versed in e-discovery platforms and loading databases and et cetera. So we have paralegals who work very closely with Cloud9 to make sure that all of the data is loaded correctly and is and looks good. But if there are any glitches or anything on our end where we might need something different, or we might need to say add something to that data or manipulate it in some way, it's good to have that resource in Cloud9 to be able to call them or email them and say, hey, can we do this? And they're always happy to kind of brainstorm with us to see how we can get that done.
Perfect. And so I heard cost considerations. That was a main
Yeah.
reason to change. And then what were some of the costs there? Was it the hardware? What were some of those specific costs that you were able to alleviate?
Well, I think when we were looking at where we were in terms of concordance, that's not really a system that's managed anymore. And so it's something where we had a harder time with the technical aspects of that. We left a firm where there was an entire in-house um, like e-discovery team who largely did that. And so we didn't want to have to incur those costs internally. And so that was one of the main cost considerations. But then also from a data storage perspective, there are a lot of e-discovery platforms out there that charge per gigabyte. And so we were in the unique position where we could join Cloud9 and have more of a flat fee structure, which was really helpful for us, particularly given the number of users that we have, which is low compared to other people. And yeah, those were the main storage considerations, along with just understanding that we had terabytes of data on our system, and we were paying for those costs. And so a way to move some of that off of our internal systems to an external system just made sense.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Um, so when you started the project, what were some of the processes you put together that helped make for an easy transition from concordance into Cloud9 Review?
Yeah, well, we left our firm actually pretty quickly, and so we hit the ground running fairly quickly as well. And so being up and running as fast as possible was really important, particularly for priority cases. And so one of the things internally we did was we talked to every attorney and we said, okay, what are your priority cases? And what databases do you need to be in right now? Or what
Mhm.
databases can we transfer now so that they're up and running for you when you need them in, say, a month? So we really created an active matters list of databases that were actively being used and then set a priority system for those. And we kept in contact with all of the attorneys who had those databases to say, hey, I know you were running a production out of this database. Is your review done? Can we now transfer this to Cloud9? And then in addition to that, one of the things that we did with Cloud9 was create a spreadsheet that showed them this is the database file, but then also these are where the image files and all of the data files are located within that. So it wasn't just handing them a zip file and saying, okay, figure it out. It was identifying for them, here's the database and here's all the data you should need for that database.
Okay. Were there any other processes you had to put in place around that, or was it pretty turnkey with Cloud9? Walk me through a little bit of that sort of nuts and bolts process there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really turnkey. I think the Cloud9 team was super receptive to the extent that we had an emergency priority or something along those lines. They really pivoted very quickly and were able to pick up that and get it loaded as quickly as we needed it, or maybe it was an existing database that we needed more stuff done to, those types of things. So yeah, it was really, I thought, a seamless process in that respect. It took several months, but we transferred, I think, over 50 databases. So I mean,
That's
it was a lot of data to transfer over, and we knew at the get-go that that's how it was going to be. And there were just a lot of conversations with the Cloud9 team about how it was going to get done and what resources were available to us and how that would work. And I thought that was very helpful that they explained upfront how things would work, what their estimated time was for each of these databases. And to be honest with you, I mean, I was involved in the process, but I was really hands off in the process. And rarely anyone came to me with any type of issue. So, as far as I'm concerned, it allowed me to do my job and I didn't have to worry about anything else.
so you're organized up front, had the list of what you needed, triaged most important, right? And so that helped downstream processes. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah, very cool. So fast forward now, all the data's into Cloud9 Review. What were some really neat either surprises or enhancements in workflow? What were some of those things that you saw now that those same cases went from concordance into the cloud? What were some of those really neat workflows and benefits for that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things obviously is that you can access the databases from a web browser, which is a lot different if you're thinking about being away from the office, working remotely, which, we don't typically do, but sometimes we have to. But being able to do that without having to be connected to VPN and be connected to our internal systems, all of those things were very helpful. And then I personally really love the native tree view
Mhm.
in Cloud9 because that I'm a very visual person, and so that kind of allows me to see the data the way that it exists, like in a quote unquote file folder. And so I can see when the client sends me a whole bunch of data and it's organized in a specific way, I can see that data the same way that they organized it. And a lot of times it's really helpful for me for privilege reviews because a lot of times they've already designated the information that's privileged in a folder. And so it makes the review process a lot easier and actually a lot quicker.
Makes sense. Yeah. So sort of taking this down to the runway a little bit, when you're looking at this process again, right? Are there any things you would change? What advice would you possibly give anybody looking at this, right? So many viewers out there who are watching this and taking notes. Would be some really good things for them to know, learn, in their own process as they may be going through this?
Yeah, I think one of the main things is you can really tailor the process depending on what your needs are. And so we had several meetings up front with the Cloud9 team before we even started the process to say, okay, here's what we expect at the end. And they said, okay, well, here's how we think this should go then. And we really worked together to kind of come up with a plan on how that would work. Because obviously we'd never done it before, and I think with the volume of data that we had, they knew it was going to be a really large undertaking. And so having those conversations and understanding that, you kind of need a plan in place in order to execute. You can't just start sending databases off and say, please add these. So really being organized, and absolutely setting up a priority list, I think was really important. Um, and then also just giving yourself enough time to complete the process, because it's always a process.
Exactly right. Well, thank you, Annette. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it. Thanks so much, Rick.
Yeah, thank you, Annette, and thanks everybody for tuning in. If you have any questions for Annette or for us, please reach out to your sales rep, and we will get you in touch. But thank you, Annette, again for your time today, and look forward to continue to work with you.
As do I.
Awesome, thank you.